Victor Wembanyama's GOAT ceiling is absolutely insane right now. The mountain has a name. Let's be clear about what we're actually asking here. Not whether Victor Wembanyama can be the best player of his generation. Not whether he can be the greatest international player, or the greatest big man, or the greatest defensive player of all time. We're asking whether this kid, this 7'4" alien from France, who's barely scratched the surface of his NBA career, can one day stand above Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird. We're asking if he can climb the entire mountain. And honestly, the fact that the question doesn't sound completely stupid is already saying something. Because here's the thing about the GOAT conversation. It's not a participation trophy. It's not handed out for potential or highlights or Twitter hype. It's earned through years, through rings, through moments that get replayed for decades, through a career so dominant that basketball historians have no choice but to include your name in the first sentence. That's the bar. That's what we're measuring against. And yeah, it's almost inhuman. But let's actually break it down properly. Controlling the league, every player who has ever seriously entered the GOAT conversation had a period where the league felt like it belonged to them, not shared, not co-owned with 3 other superstars. Jordan had that. There was a stretch in the 90s where watching him play felt like watching something inevitable. You knew he was going to score, you knew he was going to win, and somehow that made it more impressive, not less. LeBron controlled the NBA Finals for nearly a decade straight. Think about that. Nearly 10 years of showing up to the biggest stage and refusing to leave quietly. Kareem dominated across 2 different decades, collecting 6 MVP awards, like he was just doing his job. For Wembanyama to enter that airspace, he needs a run where the answer to who's the best player in the world is so obvious that asking the question feels like a waste of time. That means multiple MVP awards, not 1, not 2 as a courtesy. We're probably talking 3, maybe 4, because historically that's the threshold where individual dominance becomes undeniable. He's elite. Great. Fantastic. Hall of Famer for sure. But if he wins 3 or more, now we're having a completely different conversation. Now the narrative starts shifting. Here's a fun thought though. Imagine being the poor defender assigned to guard a 7 or 4 guy who can shoot off the dribble from 30 feet. That's not basketball defense. Championships matter. They have always mattered. And no amount of advanced statistics is ever going to change that. Jordan won 6, Kareem won 6, LeBron has 4, Magic Johnson has 5, Bill Russell won 11, which is almost offensive when you think about it. Fair or not, greatness in basketball has always been tied to winning at the highest level. It's just the culture of the sport. If Wembanyama wants to be in that tier, he almost certainly needs multiple championships. And here's the part that makes it harder. He can't win them as a sidekick. He can't be the second best player on a championship team and expect that to carry serious weight in this conversation. The rings need to come with finals MVPs attached. They need to come with performances where when people remember those series, they remember Wemby. They remember him carrying the load. They remember him being the engine, the closer, the reason it happened. That probably means at least 4 titles, maybe 5, with multiple finals MVP awards proving he wasn't just along for the ride. Because in the GOAT debate, rings aren't just counted, they're weighed, and they're weighed based on context. This is where it starts to feel genuinely difficult. Because winning championships in the NBA isn't just about being great. It requires the right teammates, the right front office decisions, the right health at the right time, and frankly some luck that nobody likes to admit. Jordan had Pippen, LeBron had Wade, then Kyrie, then AD. Building a dynasty around a 7-4 unicorn is one thing. Sustaining it long enough to stack rings is another challenge entirely. Shit gets complicated at the top. The uniqueness weapon. Now here's where Wembanyama's case actually starts to get interesting. Because his path to greatness doesn't look like anyone else's. It can. He's too different. Jordan was the greatest scoring guard we've ever seen. LeBron redefined what a point forward could be. Kareem had the skyhook, arguably the most unguardable shot in basketball history, combined with 20 seasons of elite production. Every GOAT candidate built their case around something specific and dominant. Wembanyama's argument has to be built on something we genuinely haven't seen before. Versatility at a scale that doesn't make logical sense for someone his size. He's 7'4", and he handles in transition.
He got tricky there. Looked like he's going to pass that ball out to the corner. There you go. Wembanyama will stop.
He's 7'4", and he shoots threes off the dribble with legitimate range. He's 7'4", and he can switch onto wings and guard perimeter players without looking like a complete noob doing it. That combination of size and perimeter fluidity is unprecedented. It's not that he's a big man who can step out a little. It's that he plays like a guard. who somehow ended up in a body that breaks the rules of what guards are supposed to look like. Imagine a player averaging 28 to 30 points per game, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 to 4 blocks over a sustained period of years. Not a single season, years. Imagine a guy who's in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation while simultaneously being in the MVP race every single season. That's the kind of two-way supremacy that reshapes how we talk about basketball. Defense actually matters. Here, this point deserves its own focus because it often gets glossed over when people talk about offensive superstars. Defense matters. It has always mattered in the GOAT debate, even if people don't lead with it. Jordan made all defensive teams consistently. He wasn't just a scorer. He was a legitimate pest on defense who could guard the best players on the other team. LeBron anchored elite defensive units during his prime years in Miami and Cleveland. Kareem protected the rim for 2 decades. Defense is part of the conversation whether fans acknowledge it or not, but here's what makes Wembanyama's potential case historically unique. If he becomes the best offensive player in the world while simultaneously being the most feared rim protector in the league, that's a combination that almost never happens at the same level at the same time. Hakeem Olajuwon did it. There are stretches where Giannis has come close. Tim Duncan did it quietly for years without getting enough credit for either side. But the full package, the guy who makes opponents miserable on both ends every single night, that's rare. And at 7'4", that's fucking rare in a way that deserves its own category. If Wemby reaches that peak simultaneously on offense and defense, that changes the texture of the entire argument. The long game. Let's talk about longevity because this is where the GOAT debate is really won or lost over time. Nobody wins this conversation with a 5-year peak. Nobody wins it with a 7-year run of dominance followed by decline. The greatest player ever has to endure. LeBron's greatest advantage in the GOAT debate is simply time. Over 20 years of elite production. That's not an accident. That's an obsession with preparation, with health, with evolving his game as his body changed. Kareem played 20 seasons. Jordan dominated across 2 separate three-peats with years in between. The conversation isn't decided in year 3 or year 7. It's decided across 15 to 20 years of consistent excellence. This is where the conversation gets physically uncomfortable when applied to Wembanyama, because history has not been kind to 7'4" athletes. The bodies just don't tend to cooperate at that height across long careers. It's not an insult, it's just biomechanics being what they are. For Wemby to even enter the GOAT conversation seriously, he has to defy the physical precedent. He has to stay healthy in a way that no player his size has ever managed at the highest level of the sport. He has to evolve his game as defenses adapt. He has to avoid the devastating narrative that swallows so many talented players. Because the greatest player of all time doesn't peak briefly and then become a story about what could have been. He endures. And enduring at that height is its own mountain to climb before he even touches the GOAT argument. Changing the game itself, cultural impact, is the part of this conversation that gets skipped over most often. And I think it's a mistake to ignore it. Because the players who end up with the strongest GOAT arguments aren't just the ones who dominated. They're the ones who change things. Jordan didn't just win championships. He globalized basketball. He turned the NBA into an international product in a way it had never been before. LeBron defined a generation of player empowerment, athletes understanding their own leverage and using it. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird quite literally saved the NBA in the 80s when the league was struggling. Steph Curry changed how the entire sport is played. His influence on spacing, on three-point volume, on how teams are built is still reshaping the game years later. If Wembanyama becomes the GOAT, he won't just stack statistics and collect hardware. He'll change what basketball looks like. Maybe he ushers in an era where 7-footers are trained like guards from childhood because everyone saw what a guy who moved like a guard at 7'4" could do. Maybe he shifts roster construction permanently. Maybe front offices start building entirely differently because of what he proved was possible. The GOAT isn't just dominant. The GOAT is transformative. He leaves the game different than he found it. Moments that live forever. Here's something that doesn't show up in statistics but absolutely matters. Narrative, mythology, the moments that get replayed forever. Jordan had the shot over Craig Allo. He had the flu game. He had the shrug in Portland. LeBron had the 3-1 comeback against a 73-win Warriors team. Kareem had iconic finals runs across 2 franchises. Magic Johnson dropped 42 points playing center as a rookie in the NBA Finals. These moments aren't just highlights. They're the stories that get told to explain why someone belongs at the top. They're the evidence people reach for when the debate gets heated at 2 a.m. For Wembanyama, it will take legendary playoff performances, the kind that become mythology. A 50-point finals game. A 15-block playoff masterpiece that makes defenders question their career choices. A Game 7 takeover so complete and dominant that people who weren't alive for it still know exactly what happened. The GOAT isn't built quietly. He's built under pressure, in moments where everything is on the line, and he shows up anyway. Those moments haven't happened yet, but the stage is being set. The competition makes the case. One reason Jordan's legacy hits so hard is the context of his era, the players he beat, the way he beat them. One reason LeBron's case is so compelling is the sustained quality of competition he faced across different eras of the modern game. If Wembanyama dominates in a loaded era, we're talking about Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jason Tatum, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and future superstars who haven't even entered the league yet. If he consistently outperforms all of them on the biggest stages, that strengthens his claim in a way nothing else can. The higher the quality of competition, the stronger the case becomes when you beat them repeatedly, what it actually takes. So let's just say it plainly. To become the greatest NBA player of all time, Victor Wembanyama needs multiple MVPs, probably 3 or 4 minimum. He needs 4 or more championships as the undisputed best player on those teams, with multiple finals MVPs to prove it. He needs sustained two-way dominance across at least 15 elite seasons without the wheels falling off at that height. He needs iconic playoff moments that get replayed for generations. He needs to transform the culture of basketball itself, and he needs a statistical profile that makes people feel like the numbers must be wrong when they look them up. That's the bar. That's what the mountain looks like from the base. And I won't pretend it isn't almost inhuman to ask someone to clear all of that, but here's the thing that makes this conversation so compelling right now. The fact that we're even asking this question about a player this early in his career says everything about how genuinely rare Victor Wembanyama already is. Most rookies are fighting for all-star appearances. Most young stars are aiming for superstardom as a ceiling. Wembanyama's ceiling, if everything goes right, if he stays healthy, if he keeps evolving, if the team around him is built correctly, isn't just the best player in the league, it's best ever. Physically, he's unlike anyone basketball has ever seen. Skill-wise, he's evolving faster than anyone expected. Mentally, he appears disciplined and composed in a way that most 20-year-olds simply aren't. The path exists, but it's narrow. Brutally, stupidly narrow. To become the greatest NBA player of all time, Wembanyama can't just be amazing. He has to be inevitable. He has to be the name that starts every championship conversation for a decade. He has to make defenders feel like they're 8 years old playing against their dad in the driveway. If one day we look back and see MVP trophies stacking, rings multiplying, defenders helpless against a 7.4 shot creator who also erases everything at the rim, and kids growing up modeling their game after a player who shouldn't logically exist, then maybe we'll say we witnessed something bigger than potential. Maybe we'll say we watched the greatest player basketball has ever seen. But right now, the mountain remains, and Victor Wembanyama is only at the base. If you enjoyed watching this, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. We've got plenty more coming, and trust me, you don't want to miss where this conversation goes next.